Today we are ranking every single boss battle in the Super Mario RPG remake for the Nintendo Switch, meaning we're taking the worst bosses and going all the way up to the best boss. Now in order to fill this criteria, it comes down to how unique the boss is, what type of moves do they use, what are the main gimmicks in order to take that boss down, the boss arena, and also the difficulty of that boss. Also, some bosses will be grouped together, and I'll talk about it when I get there, and also I will be using the rematches of bosses to talk about them as well. In total, we have 29 different boss battles to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. Real quick though, before we get started, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. This video took a while to make. If you really enjoyed Mario RPG, you want to see more videos about it. But let's jump into the list of all the bosses ranked in Super Mario RPG's remake. Number 29, we have the Hammer Brothers. The Hammer Brothers are a very basic boss battle in this game. It's just two Hammer Bros that stand side by side, and they don't really do any type of bros attacks or anything towards you, so it's a very simple fight. You're just taking out both Hammer Bros. You don't have any party members at this time, so it's just Mario versus two Hammer Bros, and it's about as basic as you can get. It's the beginning of the game, so it makes sense. Number 28, we have Croco. You actually fight Croco twice, but his boss battles are really not that interesting. I mean, for the most part, all he does is kind of pull out a mystery item or something out of his bag and throws it at you. Most of the time, it's a bomb, but yeah, that's really about his entire moveset. Hey, at least you get to fight him alongside Mallow. Number 27, we have Gasox, which is a very weird mini-boss type of thing. I mean, the boss music plays, so we're saying it. So it starts off as foamless, and you really can't hit him until you use a special attack, which will then allow him to appear. Then you hit him a couple times and he's dead. So like, yeah, the whole entire gimmick is that you need to use a single special attack. It's a very strange boss considering the fact that it's also one of Bowser's specials in this game, but yeah, it's a cloud. Next up, we have Bowser, and I felt like this one was a lot better than the bosses that I've already put on this list, simply due to the fact that it took a little bit of a unique approach for a first boss battle. You didn't just have to wail on Bowser, you could actually break the chain in order to drop him down from the ceiling, which is what you're intended to do. I thought it was cool how it kind of tells you that you're going to have to actually target different things and not just the boss all the time, so taking out the chain in order to drop Bowser was a unique approach. Number 25, we are right back up on the chandeliers with Boomer this time around. Now, Boomer doesn't have a unique way to take him out. You don't have to take the chains out or the Shy Guy ropes in order to drop the chandelier. You just have to attack him, and he has lots of special effects that he can throw at you, and he can also change his appearance by turning blue and raise his vigor up a little bit, but for the most part, it's nothing super special. We don't have to do anything unique to take him out, but he definitely looks really cool, and using his sword for different attacks is a really cool approach. Number 24, we have Clay Morton, which is just this guy on a pogo stick, and he's surrounded by bodyguards, which makes it a little bit more unique than the rest, because you have to plan out how you take out lots of his bodyguards in order to reach him, because they will all do a lot of damage to you. So you have to plan out your attacks a little bit smarter this time around instead of just wailing on the boss, which I actually like. Next, we have the factory workers with the clerk, manager, and director, where they're all pretty much the same. They just get slightly increasingly harder, and they also have minions around them as well, but for the most part, they're just these knights that try to swing their axes at you, and these hammers try to hit you as well, which is kind of like Clay Morton, where you have to take out their minions in order to reach them, because their minions might do a lot of damage to your team. Nothing super special, but by the time you get to the director, it definitely gets at least a little bit more difficult, because the Poundettes can actually poison you when they hit you. And when you go back to do the boss rematches, you can actually go fight Booster, and the Booster boss fight is weird to me, because all of these are supposed to be a lot harder, where this one didn't feel like it was all that special, because the whole gimmick is Booster is building or working on his train, I guess, and if he gets it all the way completed, he will ram it into you for a, finishing blow, I guess wiping out the entire squad that's on the floor. But the thing is, I never even really got to see this. I had to look up videos of that because it's so easy to prevent him from building the train. All you have to do is attack him literally one time with any attack and he'll stop and then go back to work. So you're just kind of fighting off his sniffets and also hitting him one time just to get him to stop working. So it's not really a big deal. Just keep hitting Booster and he'll die before the sniffets even die. Not to mention, Booster doesn't even attack himself. So it's about you just kind of wailing on him to prevent him from building his train and also hitting his sniffets. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more from Spiritovich, but he does use lots of magic powers that wipe your whole squad clean of their health. So yes, you'll be doing lots of healing and also attacking him as well, but his really only main gimmick remake is that eventually he duplicates himself into 2 copies, and I don't really know if this does anything super special. I just found myself completely wailing on one of the copies, and then eventually he came back together and ended up defeating him. So yeah, for him to be a giant spear weapon, I kind of wanted more out of him, but still, I guess it's kind of cool, and it had some difficulty thanks to his magic wielding. Mega Smilax was kind of cool because it had multiple different segments where you had to keep defeating little Smilaxes as the Shy Guy kept coming in and watering it, eventually giving you the Mega Smilax. This one was kind of difficult as well because it was kind of like 3 versus 3 with one of them being a gigantic boss, so you had to know which ones to take out, and also considering the fact that it kept using the Petal Blast magic attack where it would put the whole crew into a mushroom state and not allowing you to attack or anything, which really sucked. But yeah, it actually had some difficulty to it, and I actually found it pretty cool to have like a 3v3 fight against them. Berto was probably one of the more random bosses in this game. It starts off in an egg called Shelly, and you have to actually crack the egg open in order to get Berto to come out and have a boss fight, and it's just a strange boss fight all around. I think I just like it, you know, more than the rest because it's just so strange, and I like the satisfaction of cracking the egg open and then attacking Berto. But yeah, for the most part, she'll just shoot eggs at you, and also some of the eggs sometimes will join her in battle as her party members, but for the most part, it's a very easy boss fight. But once again, it's just weird, and I kind of like it in a weird way. Number 18, we have the Factory Chief in Gunyolk. Now this one was strange as well because it was just like this giant tank that would actually fire some pretty devastating attacks at you. And the reason why this one is not lower is simply because it did have some difficulty. There was one finishing laser attack that it would use that would pretty much wipe out your squad, that it would charge up after a couple attacks. And it had lots of other weird ones, and I like the weird fire goopy thing that came out of the Morton part of it. Now the Factory Chief really didn't do a whole lot. It would occasionally throw a ninja star. It still did a lot of damage, but you could pretty much wipe him out the way really fast. It was really just Gunyolk which really put up the big fight because it could block a lot of your attacks and it was resistant to a lot of things, and also considering the fact that it was a tank, so it had multiple different attacks like shooting cannonballs, lasers, and even status effects. Number 17, we have Wiiz Koopa, which is just really a magic Koopa at the end of the day. But I actually like the things that he'll do during the battle. For instance, he'll spawn in different enemies that you won't see in the entirety of the game, like a Yoshi dragon named Bahamut, and also like a giant King Bomb. Wait, that's not King Bomb. So I like how this boss fight kind of shifts your focus away from the boss for a second. You have to take out the surrounding enemies and then take out the boss, or this Bob-omb is going to wipe out your team. This boss battle probably caught me off guard the most, because it was just like so random when you fell into this den and found Cloaker, Domino, and eventually Mad Adder, the giant snake. So this is a really unique boss concept, so you can take out either one you want, but whoever you kill first, the other will fuse with the Mad Adder and make their attacks a lot more powerful. So technically there could be a little planning that goes along with this boss battle. Now Cloaker will use lots of physical attacks like his sword, and Domino will use tons of magic attacks. And all this gets powered up even more by the Mad Adder fusion, which makes him extremely more powerful. Yeah, I really like the freedom and variety of this boss fight in the branching paths based on who you decide to defeat first, and I think that's a pretty cool concept. Next up we have the Zar Dragon, which is a dragon made out of lava bubbles, which is kind of a unique concept. Now, the only thing kind of bringing this down lower than it could have been is the fact that it has an extreme weakness. Obviously, with it being covered in fire, you'll be using Mallow's Snowy special a lot. I mean, seriously, just spamming it over and over again, which is a long animation to keep seeing. Dragon will also spawn in little Helios rocks, which also can attack you as well, so you kind of got to take them all out while taking him out, which isn't a big deal if you just use one of your basic attacks and get that shockwave. Halfway through the fight, he'll fall into the lava and come back as Zombone, so I guess technically it was a real dragon, which is very creepy looking. Now his attacks are kind of basic in this form. All he'll do is continuously try to bite you, but it's just kind of the atmosphere. I love the lava around this arena, and the boss idea is really cool, having him transform into like a zombie after defeating him. And during this phase, he'll also have some special magic attacks as well, like Scream, that could put your partner into a fear state. So yeah, I actually love the whole concept of this boss. I wish they just did a little bit more with his attacks. Next up at number 15, we have Knife Guy and Great Guy. These are just kind of unique. I like how one's on this bouncy ball and one has knives, and they're both like these weird clown creatures, but they all have some fun attacks that they throw at you, which causes you to have to know how to dodge. And I love the setting being on the top of Booster's tower, and the sky and clouds in the background is really cool. I also like how they have different properties as well, like Great Guy will use different magic effects like a horn in order to put your characters to sleep, and Knife Guy will actually use physical attacks like throwing knives at you. They'll eventually even team up like a bros attack and stand on top of each other, and if you keep hitting the one on the bottom enough, they'll eventually fall and topple over, which I thought was a really cool thing. But overall, I thought they were a really fun duo to fight, and it definitely was a good boss towards the beginning of the game still. Next up we have Valentina and Dodo, which I thought was a really cool concept for a boss fight, as she demands Dodo takes one of your party members and has a 1v1 with them in another separate arena, which is kind of cool. You get no help from any of your team members, and it's going to pick a random one at that, which means you're up to whatever that character can do. You can't swap them out, and you can't really do much else besides your own character's specials and attacks. Phase 2 will shoot over to Valentina and the other 2 party members that stayed over, and you'll have to battle her with tons of her magic attacks and different elements and status effects she'll put on you. Then for Phase 3, Dodo and your missing partner will join the fray, and then it's a 2v3, where Dodo will join Valentina, where he will use physical attacks and she will continue to use magic in order to poison or change your party, which is actually kind of difficult at times. I love the multiple phases and direction that this boss battle went in, and it was definitely a different one for sure. Next up we have King Calamari. I actually like the approach for this one because you don't know what you're fighting until you eventually take out all the tentacles, and you have to keep doing this, making your way across the room until eventually you see the giant squid sticking out of a pipe. I also like sometimes how this squid will take one of your party members and just chuck them away for like a turn or two until eventually they get to fall back down to the ground and continue to fight. I also like how it gives your team tons of poison effects, which is slowly chipping away at their health, and it kind of reminds me of like Gooper Blooper all the way back from Super Mario Sunshine that continued to return in future Mario games, so yeah, I guess it all started here. Number 11 we have Bellum. Now for the most part, Bellum just has lots of status effects, so it'll put your team to sleep and do weird things to them, but one of his attacks that actually gets a lot stronger with his rematch is he'll eat one of your party members and actually make a clone out of them, so you actually have to dodge your own attacks pretty much that you've learned throughout this game, which is a really cool concept because it's just like, okay, I've been timing this all the time when it comes to attacking an enemy, now I actually have to time a dodge from my same party, which is a unique concept. It also kind of makes you want to choose who you put out on the field, because if you want Peach to be copied, odds are she's going to heal some of that team as well, so yeah, you have to pay attention to who you have out and who's going to get cloned. Now we are down to the final 10, and at number 10 we have Jinx. Now there's a lot of things going on with Jinx because you fight him multiple different times, and you have to learn different attack patterns from him because lots of his attacks are brutal and they will knock you in one hit, so you have to learn how to dodge really well in this dojo, which I like that concept. It's not just standing there and taking hits, you actually have to be skilled at the game and learn your button presses. But with that said, there is a rematch against him, which makes it even cooler. You have to build up your triple team gauge from 0% to 100% to perform a triple move on him in order to finish the battle, which means you have to have tons of well-timed button presses when it comes to offensive and defensive measures, or you'll be in this battle reviving your teammates for a very long time, because every single attack that Jinx does is going to be devastating. So I found this concept to be really cool, where it's not just offensive that you have to be spot on, but it's also defensive as well. He has like 4 or 5 different attack patterns, which means you have to learn and memorize them all, or you're going to get completely wiped. Number 9, we have the secret boss of the game, Culex. Now, the reason why Culex is not as high as he could be is because, yes, it is a difficult boss battle for sure. And the rematch against him is definitely one of the hardest bosses, if not the hardest one in the game. But just because it's that hard doesn't mean it's that unique or original compared to some of the other bosses I felt in this game. But this boss is a crazy Final Fantasy themed dragon man that has tons of magic attacks that can wipe your team of all of their health. Not to mention it has 4 floating crystals that have their own properties and their own weaknesses that you have to learn, and you can take them down. For instance, the fire crystals weak to snow or ice, and the same with the ice crystals weak to fire, and so on. And you have to learn these in order to take them down as quickly as possible, because when these crystals are at play, they can do a lot of damage to your team. But in the rematch, it's even harder because every time you break a crystal, it will slowly give Culex even more protection and power as well. Not to mention, Culex has the power to completely disable one of your options, like items, specials, or even your attack, where you have to use any of the other 2, which makes things even even harder. On top of his extremely strong magic attacks, he even has a special counter that counts down from 4, and when it hits 0, he will unleash a one-shot kill swipe, which you can technically dodge it, but it's extremely short window that you have to hit, like a super small amount of frames. I really don't know what it is, but man, it is a small window, and actually I was able to get it once, and it's a super satisfying feeling. Yeah, this boss is mainly just very difficult, and that's its main gimmick, but it's very rewarding, and it feels really good to land your attacks and your blocks and eventually defeat this guy. Next up, we have Bunt. Yes, it's a wedding cake, and I actually love the concept of you not just using tons of specials to take this thing out, because eventually all of the candles will be lit on top of the cake. It's your job to blow the candles out to make him weaker, but the only way to do that is to use basic A attacks instead of using tons of specials, which is kind of unique, and it's going to make you battle this thing for a lot longer because you're not going to be doing as much damage as you would have. Also, eventually the top 2 layers will fall off and you'll still have to fight the bottom called Raspberry, so there's lots of different parts and elements to this boss. Not to mention the rematch against him where the bakers will actually continuously throw fireballs on top of the candles in order to light 2 at a time, and they even start off with 3 at a time, which is kind of crazy. But I like the approach to this boss battle, not allowing the player to just wham on them with special attacks, instead using your basic ones. Coming in at number 7, we have Johnny and his pirate gang, which is pretty cool because this is a big squad versus your squad, and you can take out the gang, you can take out Johnny, it just depends on how you want to handle this boss fight. But where it gets pretty interesting is eventually Johnny will call out Mario and just want to have a 1v1 duel against him, which reminds me a lot of the Valentina and Dodo fights, which means you're on your own, so everything that you do is up to Mario, all your attacks, all your healing and everything, so you have to dodge and attack properly. And in the rematch it's even crazier because Johnny will start the battle just 1v1 against Mario. There's no partners included at all in the rematch, and the only thing that you can control is who cheers you on from your team, which I don't know exactly how those status effects work and based on who you choose, but yeah, you're gonna have to learn how to dodge some of the more difficult attacks in this game, including magic attacks such as the stupid snowflakes. But honestly, if you want to win this battle, you have to get at least like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 dodges to completely protect yourself to give you enough time to defeat him, which these battles are going to be very quick. You can defeat him very quick or he's going to defeat you very quick. That's the great part about it. So it's a bunch of rinse and repeat until you learn how to time down your dodges perfectly. Number 6, we have Punchinello, which actually had a chance to be even higher on this list if it wasn't for the stupid rematch. But let's talk about this boss battle. So for the most part, he will use nothing but bob-ombs and varying different sizes, from mini ones, regular ones, bigger ones, and even gigantic ones. It's your job to take these things out and detonate them before they run into you and blow up your squad. And the rematch against him is so bittersweet because the concept is there, it's just the way it's executed is strange. So he will drop bob-ombs, and some of them will face you, and some of them will face him. The ones that face him are the only things that can actually hurt him in this battle. Like, nothing you do will do more than 1 or 2 damage, so the bob-ombs actually have to do the battle for you. It's your job to have them facing him, but the only way that you can turn them is just by slamming them with attacks and hope eventually it works. Maybe there's a better way to do this out there that I just don't know, but man, I swear 90% of the time the bob-ombs would just not turn around no matter how hard I was hitting them. It seemed to be the best thing to work was just to use one of Mario's specials like the fireballs and just unleash them at the crowd and hope they turn the right way. So it's a cool concept, I just wish there was a better, more surefire way to turn the bob-ombs around, and like I said, maybe I'm just missing something, but yeah, I thought it was pretty cool to have the bob-ombs actually doing the damage and not the party members. Number 5, we have Boer, and somehow, yeah, he made it to number 5, and I just love the whole concept, I love the boss arena, I love everything about this boss battle. How you start off just fighting him with Gino, and then, you know, you never even get to use him until this exact moment, which is really cool. And then eventually the whole crew comes in, and then you fight Boer together, which is so cool. And I love the fact that his arrows are actually just pieces and strands of his hair that he'll use to fire at you, which is really cool. But let's talk about actually what he does. He does something extremely unique by preventing your team from using specific action commands. For instance, he might take away your specials, your items, or your regular attacks, and you have to kind of just play with whatever else is available at the time. For instance, if he takes your items, you can't heal unless you use Mallow's HP ring. That's really all you have, and you can't revive either, which puts you in a tight spot. Sometimes you can't use your basic attacks, which means you have to use nothing but specials or items, and if you run out of flower power, you're just going to be using items until you can actually attack again. In a way, I feel like this kind of teaches the player how to use different aspects of the fighting mechanics by just not using attack over and over again, or your specials over and over again, and how to versatile your entire kit, which I really love. I feel like this is an extremely good earlier on boss battle. I really love Boer. I remember verbally laughing out loud when I saw a countdown start with the boss battle, how it was just like this clock leaning over. I literally thought it was the funniest thing ever. Like, how is this a boss battle? But it actually ended up being one of my favorites in the entire game. I love how the hands go around, and at each time, it actually does a brand new attack, and it is full of almost every attack in the game, including once it gets all the way around, it does a devastating one. Not to mention the two bells on top actually have powers. For instance, they could put status effects on your team, like putting them to sleep, and they can even attack. And his bells can even make his hands move faster, so yeah, there is a lot to look out for here, and it is a challenging boss battle. I simply love the uniqueness of this one and all the different status effects and special powers that this boss battle had, and it was always changing as soon as the arrows moved. Number 3, we have Exor, which is a very difficult boss battle because there's a lot of moving parts to it. So in order to actually defeat the head of Exor, which is at the very top, you have to take out the eyes on the actual blade. Whether it's one of them or both of them, you have to take them both out in order to make them dizzy, allowing you to deal damage to Exor's head. His mouth can also cause some extreme magic attacks to happen that can completely wipe your team, so you'll also want to make sure that you're taking the mouth out as well. And trying to do all of these while knowing that you're technically not even damaging the boss yet is actually kind of crazy. This is just kind of temporarily stopping some of his attacks and allowing you to attack the head. So there's a lot of parts that you have to pay attention to during this boss battle and decide what you want to attack each time around. Not only is this boss very unique and has an extreme difficulty, I love the background elements of it. You being at the very top of the castle and seeing the red-black sky in the background, and also the clouds going by as you're fighting this gigantic sword. It's just so cool. Coming in at number 2 as our runner-up, we have the final boss of the main game, Smithy. Smithy is the blacksmith and the reason why all of these weapon creatures exist in the first place, and it has 2 main phases. For the first phase, it's you versus Smithy versus the smelter thing. Yeah, this thing actually pours out lava and enables Smithy to create minions around the battlefield as well. So you can technically attack the machine, which I never felt to be that important, but yeah, Smithy has some powerful attacks, like bringing down a giant mallet that smashes the entire squad, beating you to death with his hammer, and also using very powerful magic attacks. But it isn't until phase 2 is where it really ramps it up. Smithy transforms into his true form, which is a horror abomination to say the least. This is a very interesting part 2 to the boss fight because he can change his appearance into 5 different things. One of them is a tank that he can actually pull bills that will down your team if you don't block it, and also shooting bullets at you out of his hands as well. In this phase, he is the most powerful as his attacks are devastating. He can then transform his head into a wizard where he'll use tons of magic attacks. He also has a metal casket head where his defense is as high as it can get. And he can also transform his head into a treasure chest, which I don't have gameplay of it here, but it will cycle through different items that he can throw at you and different status effects and stuff that he can pull out the chest, which is pretty cool. But the entire boss battle, you can attack both his body and his head as they are 2 separate entities, so this allows you to actually stun his body and prevents him from moving around or changing his head form. This was a really cool concept for a final boss, and I kind of wish there was at least one more phase to throw it over the top where he got like gigantic or something, but I really love this nevertheless. Also, I just wanted to add that Smithy's phase 1 boss theme is just so good. And the number 1 boss fight in the entire game is without a doubt the Axum Rangers. This was one of the coolest boss fights I think I've ever seen in a Mario RPG. I loved how all 5 of these Rangers were like the Power Rangers, but they're all different colors. I love how they all work and act in a different way. Axum Black will actually throw bombs at you and also attack you when you attack it as a retaliation, and also attack twice. Axum Yellow is the big guy that does a lot of damage, and he has very laggy hits where you just gotta wait and be patient. Axum Pink is able to heal the team, and Axum Green can use magic attacks. And actually, I love how they all regularly attack you, as well as they have different ways of swinging the axe that you have to memorize in order to block. For instance, the green one is very much like Luigi, where he's timid and will kind of stutter for a little bit and you have to wait before dodging. And Axum Red is pretty much just the leader. He'll throw electric attacks at you and also swing his axe, but yeah, he's just kind of the one in charge. After you defeat all the Rangers, Axum Red will actually jump onto a giant machine head in the back called the Blade, which has an absolutely devastating laser attack that will completely wipe your squad, and it recharges every 2 or 3 turns if you're lucky. So yeah, you have to be on top of this thing and deal the max amount of damage you can while also healing your team whenever you have the opportunity. I love the variety of all the characters in this boss battle and the extreme difficulty with the Blade and its giant devastating laser, and the fact that you're up in the air on this airship with the sky in the background. It just looks and feels so cool. I wish these characters had a bigger role within the story as well. I would have loved to see them more, but I loved this boss battle and for sure was my favorite in the entire game. That is all 29 boss battles ranked in Super Mario RPG's remake. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you head out, and let me know in the comments down below what you would have changed with this list and what was your favorite and least favorite bosses in the game as well, and tell me why. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.